The Klamath River dams as a violation of the human rights of the Yurok tribe. The Klamath River flows along the California-Oregon border and winds southwest into California. A river that has always flowed quickly and was home to an abundant amount of salmon, steelhead, eulachon, lamprey, and green sturgeon. With this source of wealth, it is no wonder that indigenous peoples have lived along it for thousands of years. The tribe I will be addressing in this presentation are the Yurok, and how their rights to depend on the river for sustenance, religious ceremonies, and cultural life have been grossly violated by the construction of the Klamath dams. In 1908, 6 dams were commissioned to be built along the Klamath, and all were constructed in the following 55 years. These dams were constructed without consultation of the Yurok, who greatly opposed the construction, and for good reason. Since the construction of these 6 dams, the dams have created annual toxic blue-green algae blooms during peak fishing time and resulted in water closure, which also precludes any cultural rituals in the water. Candlefish no longer exist. Coho salmon and green sturgeon are on the endangered species list, and the Pacific lamprey and Chinook salmon are declining. In 2002, a drought, low flows, and water diversion for agriculture in the upper basin resulted in dire consequences on the lower Klamath. Increased water temperatures and low flows resulted in the mass die-off of over 30,000 adult returning fall Chinook salmon within the Yurok reservation. This tragedy is known as the Klamath fish kill. The toxicity of the water and low water levels also precludes the Yurok to engage in integral traditional ceremonies that depend on the health of the river. With all of these tragedies conclude is a gross violation of Article 27 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and Articles 25 and 26 of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. First, I would like to address how the construction of the Klamath dams violate Yurok individuals' rights under Article 27 of the UNDHR. Article 27 states, "Everyone has the right freely to participate in cultural life of the community, to enjoy the arts, and to share in scientific advancement and its benefits. Everyone has the right to the protection of the moral and material interests resulting from any scientific, literary, or artistic production of which he is the author." The Yurok people's culture is entirely based in the health of the Klamath River. Decreased flows have resulted in the degradation of traditional gathering areas with an excess of gravel and stones in the lower Klamath. These areas are necessary for plants and materials for traditional practices, but because of the decreased flow, those materials are more limited. Fishing has always been a large part of the Yurok's culture, but because of the massive decrease in fish population, they are unable to do so. Additionally, as mentioned above, a healthy river is critical to various traditional religious practices, but due to toxic water conditions, the Yurok are unable to participate in them. As discussed in lecture, the health of the earth is intertwined with indigenous spiritual beliefs. Therefore, the detrimental conditions of the Klamath are in violation of spiritual beliefs. Clearly, all of these adverse effects of the dams inhibit the Yurok people's ability to participate in their cultural life, which is a violation of Article 27 of the UDHR. Next, it is necessary to understand how Article 26 of the UNDRIP is violated by the construction of the Klamath dams. Article 26 states, "Indigenous peoples have the right to the lands, territories, and resources which they have traditionally owned, occupied, or otherwise used or acquired." As discussed in lecture, Indigenous land ownership is not determined by land grants and documents, but a general sentiment of occupying and protecting their resources, in this case, the Klamath River. Indigenous people protect 22% of the Earth's resources, and the Yurok peoples are no exception. The federal government, when allocating the Yurok reservation, claimed that the resources on said property would allow them to be entirely self-sufficient and maintain their sovereignty through adequate fishing and water resources. The Yurok have always maintained their relationship with the land and protection of it, and yet, with the establishment of the dams, there is insufficient water flow and fish. Their rights to clean water, fish for sustenance, and the protection of their waters are violated by the establishment of the dams. These are lands through indigenous practices of land ownership that have been possessed by the Yurok for thousands of years, and the sullying of those waters is a violation of Article 26 of UNDRIP. When the Yurok reservation was first allocated, it was guaranteed they would have adequate resources to maintain their relationship with the lands they have always owned. However, the displacement of the tribe due to the dams calls the memories of the forced relocations the government imposed in the 1830 Indian Removal Act. Finally, the construction of the Klamath dams are a violation of Indigenous rights as enumerated in Article 25 of UNDRIP. This article states that Indigenous peoples have the right to maintain and strengthen their distinctive spiritual relationships with their traditionally owned or otherwise occupied and used lands, territories, waters, and coastal seas and other resources, and to uphold their responsibilities to future generations in this regard. The Yurok have the right to maintain and strengthen their spiritual relationships with the Klamath River. For thousands of years, their religious practices have been centered on the river and its waters. Ceremonies such as the brush dance, jump dance, white deerskin dance, and boat dance ceremonies are all conducted in or near the river and are intrinsically linked to the health of the river itself. Additionally, these ceremonies include direct exposure to the river, such as bathing or drinking of river water. The first salmon ceremony and the Capel fish dam are being attempted to be restored, although with such poor river health, this is difficult. Without steady movement of water, the Klamath has become toxic in many areas and forced the Yurok to cease their ceremonies involving the water. This is a clear violation of their spiritual rights. Additionally, they were told they would have adequate water for spiritual purposes, which has been denied to them due to the dams. Finally, the timing of cultural and fishing practices are timed using the first fish runs of salmon. However, due to massive salmon death, that is no longer possible. Clearly, the Yurok's rights under Article 25 are being violated as they are unable to maintain their spiritual relationship with the land traditionally in their ward. We can also see their rights to engage in their cultural life in the interpretations of Article 27 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, which says that in locations where there are ethnic, religious, or linguistic minorities exist, persons belonging to such minorities shall not be denied the right, in community with the other members of their group, to enjoy their own culture, to profess and practice their own religion, or to use their own language. This interpretation is involved in the larger debate of collective rights. The Yurok have collective rights to engage in their culture, which without a clean river is practically impossible. Therefore, the dams deeply violate the collective rights of the Yurok people in addition to their rights enumerated under Article 25 of UNDRIP. The Klamath dams violate the Yurok's collective rights to participate in their culture and religious life, their rights to the lands they have traditionally owned, and their right to strengthen spiritual relationships with their lands and waters. In closing, the Klamath dams comprehensively violate the rights of the Yurok and call into recent memory the disenfranchisement of their tribe by the Indian Relocation Act and settler colonialism as a whole. After years of fighting, the deconstruction of 4 dams, the largest dam removal project in history, has been taken underway. This will be followed by endless efforts to restore the river and basin to its former abundance.